Okay, everyone. I think we're trying to get everybody situated from outside.
No, it just seems like it's a lot more peaceful up there. I don't really read a whole lot of, just sitting outside, Yeah. Read a lot of good racing stuff.
All right, everyone. Thanks for. You understand? I don't know if you're going to stand or it doesn't matter to me.
Good. I'm Tom.
I want to thank everybody that rejoined. Hopefully, those out in the hall. I think this is a great topic. Again, something Jenny and I have worked on for quite some time. Horsemen as citizens marketers, being part of the solution. It's a real tangible thing that we can do to promote ourselves. And this panel, moderated by Jenny, is going to be able to guide us and direct us, and I think give some very important points. So Jenny Reese, as moderator, she is a communications and advocacy specialist, both for the National HBPA and the Kentucky HBPA. She's also the publicity director for Kentucky Downs and Ellis Park. We're also very grateful to be joined today by Greg Bensel. He straddles the world of both the National Football League and the National Basketball Association, as well as our own horse racing through his work with the owner, Tom Benson, of both New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans. Bensel is the Senior Vice President of Communications and Broadcasting for the Benson-owned New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Pelicans, and is also the General Manager for GMB Racing, the 50-horse thoroughbred and broodmare operation that the Bensons have, and a beautiful farm in Paris, by the way. Next up, we have Michael Baychalk, the Senior Partner at the Baton Rouge-based consulting firm for Ours Baychalk Incorporated, which is a leading political and public relations expert, or he is a leading political and public relations expert with more than 30 years of experience. And an LSU grad?
Eventually.
Okay. He's also a professional horse player, along with our own Judy Wagner. He won the National Handicap Championship in 2012. We're also joined today by noted equine attorney Peter Sarkopoulos. Has become a good friend, now an author of a two-part series, The Thoroughbred Trainer in the Digital Age, being published in the North American Trainer, but also I think we are trying to get that into our magazine, the Horseman's Journal, as well. He's a partner in the law firm Sarkopoulos, Johnson and Sarkopoulos in Terre Haute, Indiana, and is a staunch advocate for horsemen's rights. Last but not least, somebody who needs little to no introduction to this group. After 18 years at the Blood Horse, Tom Lamar is now the managing editor of the THARacing.com, the website for the Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, and he handles communication for both the Maryland THA as well as the Maryland Jockey Club. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny for a great panel and looking for some great insight. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, I'm really excited about this panel. Our guys here bringing quite a array of experiences that I think we can learn a lot from. The premise of this, when Eric and I started talking, was, we knew we wanted to get Tom Lamar on a panel, something to do with the media, so what was it going to be? But just in this era when the mainstream media have just largely scaled back or completely eliminated horse racing coverage, social media and websites serve as a conduit for horsemen and racetracks to get their message and stories out and to connect with the public. And the reasons for this in the micro and in the macro for horsemen, for you all to get involved. It's good for your business and it's good for the sport. And in this, hence the title, Horsemen as Citizen Marketers, we believe it's everybody in the industry's role to market the sport, because if we don't do it, who is going to do it? And so I think we're going to have Peter's put together a PowerPoint presentation. There's a great intro to, crash course on social media, and then we'll start in with the dialogue.
thank you for having me here today, and I want to start by saying that, Greg, don't you feel alone? I know we got Eric and Mike here who are LSU grads, but the two of us are Tulane grads, so we got to stay tight together here on that, right? And I also want to tell you that it's great to be back in New Orleans. As I said, I went to Tulane University, and New Orleans and Louisiana are two of my really favorite places for me. Always great to come back. I'd like for you to start and think about what you were doing 15 to 18 years ago today. That would have been back in 2000 or 2002. And then think about all the changes that have occurred in your life during that period of time. And one of the largest and most profound of those changes, I'm sure you would agree, has been brought about by various forms of social media. Social media has really changed all aspects of our life. It's changed the way we meet, it's changed the way we work, the way we shop, the way we communicate, the way we consume news and get our news, the way we consume entertainment, even the way some of us choose to find romance. It's really left almost no aspect of our life untouched. And social media has been a game changer for horse racing in our horse racing industry. But before I talk about social media today, I'd like to talk about an original game changer. And I'm looking for my, is this it here? Is this my flipper? Yeah. Okay, all right. I'm kind of a technological dinosaur, so bear with me here. Okay, here we go. Great. And that original game changer occurred in 1868. It was known as the American Stud Book. The American Stud Book came out in 1868. At that time, Andrew Jackson was in the White House. You'll recall he was the vice president when Lincoln was assassinated. And in that same year, this book was published, and it sparked the establishment of a phenomenal growth of organized racing in the United States. Up till this point, racing had been organized somewhat regionally, but this was certainly a game changer and made horse racing a true national sport. I mentioned the stud book really for two reasons. One is that it was one of our industry's first game changers, and two, because this is the 150th anniversary of the American Stud Book. But don't expect a lot of celebration. No one will probably talk about it. But Americans and our industry, our horse racing, is in need of another game changer. We have a slew of problems which I'm sure will be addressed in the next, either later today and tomorrow. So it is unlikely that we're going to have one thing be a game changer. Likely it will not be resolved, our problems will not be resolved by single stroke solutions, but rather the change will unfold from a variety of initiatives and approaches. All of these efforts we know will take place in the digital age with the power of social media playing a vital role. Proponents of horse racing will use and harness social media to succeed and to make positive change. Opponents of our sport, all of which we know there are many, will do everything they can to use social media to foil those efforts. This dynamic has been playing out online for years, and we may expect it to intensify in the future. And if there is any question as to the future of our industry and how it is going to evolve, it is going to involve social media, it is answered by statistics. If we look at the statistics here, I found them somewhat amazing, actually. If you think about social media, we have in the United States about 322 million people. 69% of Americans use some type of social media every day. That translates into 250 million people using some type of social media every single day. And the number of people using social media in the United States has increased 64% from 2005 to 2016, a remarkable increase, and it continues to rise. 68% of the Americans use Facebook, and that is the most common used, most preferenced form of social media, and 3/4 of the Facebook users utilize some form of mass media on an additional form daily. I mention all of this because social media is here to stay. I have a father, I practice in Indiana. I grew up, I'm a member of a small firm. We have 5 lawyers. My father was a founding partner of the law firm, And I grew up practicing law and working for him. I actually, when I started, I dumped trash cans and did whatever he needed at his office before I went to law school. So I've done pretty every aspect of the practice. But I will also tell you that he is as old school as they come. Number 2 pencil, rotary dial phone, yellow legal pad. And even he has viewed a YouTube video, which I found amazing. So that you're talking about, well, almost 6 out of 10 Americans have viewed or are viewing YouTube. So it gives you an idea of how many people are utilizing social media. But I also found interesting, because our industry is really a global industry, of what is happening overseas, what is happening in Europe. And those statistics are also very interesting. If you look at Europeans collectively, there are about 738 million Europeans. Well over half, 73% of all Europeans use some type of social media. That translates to almost 500 million people that are using it daily. 41% of those use Facebook, and of the 3/4 of the Facebook users, most of them utilize at least that or another form of social media daily. The growth, not only here but overseas, is going to continue to grow and grow, and our industry is going to have to embrace and be part of that as we move forward. Now, there are a lot of benefits to social media, and I would like to go through just a few of those. One is that that social media allows us to increase our visibility. It gives the ability for trainers and owners to post opinions and reviews of their services, of their skills, of their products, that otherwise would have in past been by word of mouth. Now, the word of mouth has really gone digital, and we see this by these statistics. We also are allowed, by way of social media, to monitor online comments in terms of our post, whether these are being received well or not so well. We can the ability to retool and remarket. But it also allows someone who has a positive story or a satisfied client or customer to post that on their site and have this news spread both across the country and across the globe in a matter of just minutes. From a marketing perspective, social media gives us an ability to market less expensively. Some people would say free. It's not necessarily free, but certainly less expensively. It will save time, it saves money, it saves aggravation, but most importantly, it allows us to target the specific audience. Now, I can remember, in addition to being in Indiana, we have a small farm. And years back, the farmer that was taking care of our farm began to use more or less a prescriptive application using GPS. And as I was thinking about this, that's really what social media allows all of us to do, whether we're trying to promote a skill or a product or a profession. It allows that because it allows us to, in a prescriptive way, market to those that are in need of whatever service that we have. So whether it is a supply you're selling, a training service that you're wanting to provide, a professional service in the form of an accounting service or mediation service, whatever it might be, it allows you to prescriptively market that. And additionally, it provides us with a great deal of information that we didn't have before. It allows us not only to get our information out, but it allows us to understand better the other side of the story, the other positions on issues that are important to our industry. And that, I think, is as important as anything, is to better understand the other side's position so we can begin to develop our arguments or add arguments to the positions that we're taking. In getting started with social media, I know many of you have websites, many of you already are engaged in that, but one of the things that's important when you're looking at from a social media standpoint, and I didn't really set out to pick any one, but I figured since we were in Louisiana, I would pick Tom Amos, who's a Louisiana trainer. One of the things that is important if you're using social media to market your business or the equine business in general is what basic information needs to be there. And you'll see that Mr. Amos on his website has done an excellent job of putting that basic information forward. He has contact information, he has examples of success, he has relevant news about his business. He has the ability of how to get in contact with him. He has happy people that he has trained for and successes. And I think also another person I did not put a slide up on, but was Dale Romans. I found when looking at Dale Romans, who we all know is a very successful trainer, on Twitter alone, he has almost 10,000 followers. That is a lot of people, and all those people are talking to people who are talking to people, and this is how this works. But really, when we're talking about social media, these are positives. These are things that advance the ball for all of us. But there are situations that can go bad. And there have been a couple of examples of these, and I thought I would give some examples and then talk about some legal aspects of this. And in starting, I want to kind of look at, if we can, a couple fiascos that have occurred in the equine business by way of social media. The first one dates back to 2014. You may remember the headline in the New York Times that read, PETA accuses 2 trainers of cruelty to horses. The story, you may recall, involved an investigation by PETA, who had placed an undercover investigator to work for a highly successful trainer. And part of the footage that was taken and part of that investigation ended up getting not only into print, but placed on a social media site for the New York Times, then also on PETA's site, and then made its way to YouTube. Before that was ultimately taken down, well over 2 million people had viewed that. The result was at least an initial very unpleasant period for the trainer and an overall black eye for the industry. Another more recent social media fiasco involved a trainer in New York named Jorge Navarro. And I'm sure many of you have seen that video. Again, not something to be proud of for all of us sitting here in this room. One of the final comments he made on that video that was taken by somebody on a iPhone taking video at Monmouth Park was, "Oh yes, life is great." Well, the upshot of this social media fiasco was life didn't stay so great for him very long. The cell phone was apparently operated by somebody who had problems with the owner of the horse, and they posted this eyebrow-raising video on YouTube. It quickly became the talk of the industry, and eventually both Navarro and the owner, Gindy, found themselves in front of the New Jersey Racing Commission with fines that ultimately came along. So, next I want to address some ways that if you get involved in social media, things in areas of concern so that you do not stray off and have problems, because I get a lot of calls from people. You think I'd represent a lot of people in front of race commissions and a lot of people on just general contract issues on equine matters, but one of the areas that I'm getting more calls on are social media related problems people are having. And so the question is, how do you avoid those? Well, the first is, if you have a website, or if you have a Facebook site, or if you have a Twitter account, or whatever forum you're going to use, I think that the general advice I would give you is make very, very sure that what you're putting up is accurate. Make very sure that there is nothing in that is misleading or false, because if you do, you could run into a defamation situation. Normally, when I review these cases and these situations, it comes down to really 3 criteria. If you remember, you can stay out of a lot of hot water. 1 is just civility. 2 is be somewhat rational when you're making your post. And 3 is try to be as professional as you can. If you stay away, if you keep those 3 things in mind, that eliminates the vast majority of the problems that you would have. I would also tell you that there are some areas that seem to be in this field the hot spots of where problems legally come up, and they usually fall into 4 or 5 categories. 1 is somebody posts something that is sexist. 2 is somebody strays off into a religious subject. Again, not a good idea. Something ethnic. Again, a problem. Something that could be viewed as being racist, or something that someone thinks is political humor, which becomes politically offensive. So if you can think of sexist, religious, ethnic, racist, and political humor, those are 5 areas you want to stay clear of. Then in terms of your post, always make sure you're checking for accuracy. I think that's another really critical matter. The other area that seems to be, that comes up frequently is what I would call an area under the category of blowing off steam. People who are angry about something and begin to really rant and rave on the internet, on their site. Again, not a good idea. And if there are statements made that are threatening or coercive, those are very dangerous because they can run afoul of criminal codes. Now, there are a few other points I want to talk about just briefly, and then I will turn it over because we have a lot of people here that have to make presentations. But one is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And I know when my clients or people come to me and they're putting together a new site or they're adding to their site, oftentimes they'll take a stock photograph or they'll take some kind of a stock picture or accounting and put it onto their site. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act makes that a violation. If it's someone else's intellectual property and you place that on your site, you have created a cause of action for yourself. So you need to be very careful about doing that. The other aspect of this, and I'm trying to move through this fairly quickly, but be glad to take any questions you have, is for my clients that are moving into the digital age to try to market their businesses, I always try to advise them to have a social media policy. Talk to their employees, develop some type of policy on what is and is not to be posted on a site. There needs to be attention given to confidentiality for their clients, for their owners, for their horses, and again, the categories that we want to stay away from that I've talked about earlier. And finally, I thought I would close my brief presentation with an example of marketing in terms of social media. And many of you, or several of you may have seen this, but this certainly shows the power of social media. And this is the Stronach Group's social media approach to the Pegasus World Cup last year. They decided that they would engage Conor McGregor, who is an MMF fighter, to be one of their spokespeople. And I really didn't know much about him, but in looking him up, he has 9.6 million followers. So there's a lot of people that are interested in this mixed martial arts sport and I'm not one of them, but I since have gone online and looked, it is kind of interesting. It's kind of brutal, to be honest with you, so he has almost 10 million people who follow him on a daily basis. On Instagram, he has over 3 million people who follow him. And he has 5 million Facebook likes almost at any one time. So I would tell you this was an interesting promotional use by way of social media to market a big race. And from talking to a member of the Stronach Group, it seemed to be very, very successful. It brought this particular race to an audience that otherwise probably would not have been reached. And so I thought I would end with one of my favorites. I went back and reviewed several of them. Several of them I thought were probably not appropriate, but I picked one that I thought was
I just want you to know, I gave you my very first race outfit. My Nana made it for me.
Well, she must have hated you too, Coach.
Rude. Well, if you don't want to wear a traditional race jacket, what do you want to wear?
Nothing.
I'm sorry?
I want to ride bareback, stark bollock naked.
Well, you can't. Not sure it's an official rule, but it'd definitely be a major ouchie on your dangly bits. Frankly, it's not very sanitary.
Good point.
But if you could wear anything you wanted to in your first race, Connor, what would it be?
Horse racing's been called the sport of kings. Me, your new king. You're ruining the moment, man.
You're ruining the moment.
Next, on the 13th jockey.
Connor! You forgot your socks!
Good girl. Good girl.
Lord have mercy.
Pegasus!
It reached a lot of people that traditional forms of marketing would not have reached. We can, I think, end with that. So thank you very much for your attention.
Like I told Peter, I don't think watching that made me want to watch the Pegasus World Cup, but seeing 10 million followers does make me want to find a way to access, McGregor into, horse racing somehow. But anyways, I want to, start off with, I want to point out, he brought up Dale Romans, who is very active. Well, he's not very active. Dale Romans does not do his social media. He doesn't really understand how it works. He just knows it's important, and he hires people to do it for him. He has like a team and stuff, and it is very effective. But that's something we can get into later. But I want to start with Greg and ask him, with his background in the NFL and in the NBA and even going back hockey and tennis and stuff, what are some of the takeaways that you would bring to horse racing, that, lessons horse racing can learn from the various other sports that you've been involved in?
Well, it's interesting. You listen to all these numbers that Peter was talking about, and it takes. I'm glad a good two-lane guy brought a nice PowerPoint presentation. But Doug Tatum, who's in the office, in the audience here, oversees all of our New Orleans Saints and Pelicans social media and digital platforms, and our numbers change quite a bit, but our focus in our business now with the Saints is really predominantly driven through his department. And our Facebook has over 4 million people in it. Pelicans has 1.7 million. Twitter, Saints has 1.3 million. We're hitting 800,000 people in one pop on Twitter for Pelicans. Instagram, both teams are north of 800,000. And this is one push of a button where we are accessing fans, a captive audience, people who are interested in our sport. And then you do an offshoot with the Drew Brees and other athletes that we have, Anthony Davis. It doesn't hurt. Those numbers do grow when you partner with those guys. When it comes to our organization with our horse racing business started over a glass of wine in Greenbrier with Mr. Benson and Dennis and I sitting there, and Mr. Benson had asked me. I had a little racing group called Last Mango Racing Stable. I had Jimmy Buffett and John Gruden and a few guys in there. I had guys who were multimillionaires that refused to pay their bills, and
welcome to racing.
So we lived paycheck to paycheck, but we had just average horses. We were in the claiming game with Tom Amos, and this was at a time when Tom Amos had a flip phone, didn't text, did not have that beautiful website that one of Doug's assistants did for him, by the way, and so we were talking about it, and we got into the business in the summer of 2014, California Chrome. It was the summer of California Chrome, and it just goes to show you that we're sitting here in the middle of training camp, very busy, and California Chrome is dominating the news, and it's really captivated people who were non-horse fans. I've always been a horse racing fan, and so has Mr. Benson. But Dennis really hadn't, and so we talked about it, and we were all excited just by the sheer fact of what California Chrome was doing. And so he said, Greg, what would it take to get us in the business, And I said, well, Mr. Benson, why don't you give me a check for $2 million, and that'll be a start. And we'll go out, we'll hit the September sale, and we'll buy a few horses. We ended up buying 6, 8, 10 horses in the September sale, 2 of which went to the Kentucky Derby 2 years later. And so we've had just tremendous, uncanny success. And so we are more of an anomaly than what would be the norm in this business. However, we've realized that, and we love this business, love this industry. It started out literally overnight as a hobby for us. Now it's nearly a $20 million business in our building. Mr. Benson's purchased a farm in Paris, Kentucky, and on the morning of the 2016 Kentucky Derby, we had rented a home in Louisville, and we're sitting around having breakfast, and he's like, Greg, I don't know that I really want to win the Kentucky Derby today. And I said, why is that, Mr. Benson? And he said, well, because if we do win, then we got to buy more horses, we got to buy a farm, we really have to get into this. And we didn't win the race. We finished 8th and 12th, which I thought was respectable. But he ended up buying more horses, buying one of the most beautiful farms I've ever been on, and we're in the broodmare business now, and we have come full circle. We've made it a complete business. We love it. We love promoting the game. We love promoting the industry, and we do have an unfair advantage from the standpoint of we have an NFL owner as our owner, but we have the assets 2 doors down from my office that I can go to Doug and say, you know, GMB Racing, our little Twitter following is right around 2,000, 2,500 followers. But, you know, Drew Brees loves horse racing, and he'll ask about our horses. And Drew might retweet and get it, you know, and ask and be a part of it. But I think to answer your question, which I just basically told you the history of our business without answering your question. But basically, I think one of the things we try to do is show stuff behind the scenes, you know, that we're doing at our farm or something with our trainers the morning of a race. And then obviously we throw it to the big flamethrower, and Doug will put it out to 4 million people, and we might get a spattering of other folks that are interested. We have the entire New Orleans media corps that follows GMB Racing. Now, we do not, we're racing Thursday, we're racing Friday, we're racing Sunday, and then we'll have a horse in the Louisiana Derby this year, fortunately. And so we've got some excitement building. We've got probably 12 2-year-olds that are going to get ready to come off the farm and come to our trainers. We have, our theory was New Orleans trainers, so we got Tom Amos, Al Stahl, and Dallas Stewart, 3 completely different personalities. Well, actually, I'd put Tom and Al kind of almost in the same boat, but no one's in the Dallas Stewart boat. So we have fun with Dallas. You know, if I asked Dallas, hey, there's a race on Canal here at 3 o'clock, can we get a horse? He'd have a horse running down Canal Street for us. Mm-hmm. So he loves the game, and he loves, so we're able to kind of balance a very methodical Tom Amos, thoughtful versus Dallas. We have fun bouncing those guys off of each other. You know, we've really enjoyed the sport, and like I said, we're more the anomaly, the outlier than we are the normal, because we have the ability to partner with our Saints digital platforms and use our media assets that we have and leverage everything we can. We hosted a nice event at the Benson Farm for folks in the Lexington area, and we invited TVG. TVG basically came and captured it and showed what new horse owners in the business are doing. But Mr. Benson and Mrs. Benson love the business. It's actually her business. She owns it. Mr. Benson is the spouse of the owner, and Mrs. Benson is the owner. She really loves it. They love it. They love the game. They love the pageantry of it. And I'll be honest with you, when we get on GMB Racing Twitter, and I have a sole Twitter feed that is strictly horse racing. It's away from my football. It's away from my basketball and our other businesses that we own. And it's really the feed that I go to the most. It's the one I'm most passionate about. And what I find on there, and I think everybody in this room would agree, especially on this table, is that if you're following this sport, you're passionate about it. You are passionate about it. You care about it. And it is a great, great sport. We look all the time, how does the NFL, why and how are they so popular and do the right thing, which as a team, we don't think they always do the right thing. The NBA, the same way. But why isn't horse racing as an industry not kind of, why are we not getting the traction that it should? Because it is, it is a phenomenal sport. I mean, just the other night at the fairgrounds, my daughter goes to a school here in New Orleans called Newman, and we were sitting around. I'm on the athletic board, and you know, the tried and true old stale golf tournaments everybody wants to do. We're like, hey, we'll have our golf tournament in the fall. We're trying to raise money for Newman Athletics. And I said, how about we do this? I said, how about we sell tickets for $100 a person? We go to Starlight Racing at the fairgrounds, and I will talk to trainers. I'll go walk on the backside. I will have these Newman silks made, and I'll ask them if they would run their horses in the Newman silks. Not to promote Newman, but to promote the 250 people that I got there that night that had, of the 250, 235 had never been to the racetrack. And so by the time that night ended, everyone had come up to me and said, this was the best night. We had handicappers walking around teaching people. You know, it's an intimidating deal to look at a racing form, with the exception of maybe Michael, and know it and understand it and know what to do with that information. And we had people there walking around, educating, giving tips. The tips were paying off, so that helped. And the cocktails were flowing, and people just had a great time. You know, we brought them down. I'd grab 6, 8, 10. I'd bring them down into the silks room. I brought 6, 8 down into the paddock. You know, and just introducing the game to new people to see their excitement. All we have to do is continue to introduce the game to new people as we can. But this is about social media, and I think one of the things we do, we live and die on it, because it's funny, we decide what race we're going to run in based on what we read and see on social media. That's where we are, you know, in this industry. And you see horses that are going to be moving Midwest down, you know, you see how they're shifting, or a horse gets injured and is not going to, we may go slot a horse over there. So, and you learn all that. I was talking to Gary Palmisano, and you learn all that instantaneously on Twitter. That's where I predominantly live, on Twitter. I've never been on Facebook. But having our NFL behemoth and our NBA behemoth help us, it's a big help. And it doesn't hurt to throw Tom Benson's name around to open doors. And I'll be honest with you, I'm glad you guys invited me to come sit up here. I love this sport. I mean, I've been working for the Saints for 23 years, and when Mr. Benson asked me this in 2014, I was like, you know, are you kidding? And he did write me that check for $2 million that day, and we spent 1.5 that day, and I think the ruler of Dubai spent $150 million that day, and he had 2 in the Kentucky Derby, and we had 2 in the Kentucky Derby, and we beat both of his horses.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, a couple of things. We're going to circle back later to your 250 people that you brought, because part of that is this whole thing of citizen marketers, and it just goes to show, and I'm a strong believer that one-on-one contact, or one on 250, but basically that personal contact is how you make new friends. But you were talking about doing the behind-the-scenes stuff, and that how does racing leverage that to get, you said the racing fans are so passionate. Well, how do we get the people that haven't been introduced yet to racing so they can find out about it, so they can become passionate?
Right.
How do we use?
well, I think we are seeing more and more of the NBC and the big networks starting to cover our big races, or our big racing days. And I think a part of that, for someone who's handled the media and the broadcasters in the NFL and the NBA for a long time, they're always, and Doug will attest to this, they've got enough Drew Brees practicing, you know. They want to see what's happening behind the scenes. They want to see something unique and different that they can bring to the viewer. And one of the things we did this when we were heading into the Kentucky Derby. The ABR guys had called me and asked me to be mic'd up on Louisiana Derby Day. And we did it, and it actually turned out pretty good. For somebody who is fat and ugly and can't talk like me. And it just worked. And it worked for everything that we were trying to do that day, because we have trainers that, I would argue that our trainers didn't necessarily get it 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago. Peter talked about it a little bit, you know, but now they get it. their lifeblood is in selling their business, selling their personalities, selling what they do. Because what they do and what you guys do in this room is so unique. It's unlike any other industry. It's unlike any other sport. So it's selling that behind the scenes access, giving them access. And one thing I've found out about horse racing is all doors are open. All doors are open because you go to the NFL and you are restricted to getting on the field pregame for 30 minutes in a sequestered little corner, right, Doug? You know, the other night when I had my Newman folks, I took them anywhere. Now, clearly, I know a lot of the folks over at the fairgrounds, but I wasn't abusing anything, but I took them anywhere, and everyone was kind and open and explaining, and you know, without getting somebody kicked in the head by a horse, we brought it right up close to right up close. And that's important, and so we need to get that on the air. We need to get that in everybody's timelines on Facebook and Twitter, something different and behind the scenes. We like to show a lot of that at our farm as well. You know, whether we have a new baby or the new baby comes from Adrian or wherever it comes from, you know, we try to incorporate, you know, if we lose to, for instance, in our run up to the Kentucky Derby in 2016, we get our head beat against the wall by this one horse named Gunrunner. And so every time we got on the track, Gunrunner was there, and all we did was we saw him way in the distance. So every time we did that, we would congratulate Gunrunner, you know, and Steve, and really just kind of everybody, you guys, this is a once-in-a-lifetime horse. You know, we finished 30 lengths behind him, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime horse. So I think you have to promote your opponent, your foe, your competitor, and congratulate them, because really at the end of the day, one thing I've found about this industry, the sport, we all have to band together. There's got to be at some point uniformity. I don't care if it's whether through a commissioner and look, this is a topic for another panel, but I think there's got to be some uniformity in this, some best practices at tracks, and that's going to help us get. That's going to help us get a television contract or something bigger that's going to help our industry grow, you know, and the NFL was not, they were not short-sighted. They were not, you know, everything is cookie cutter in the NFL. When you go to a stadium and you're NBC, you're plugging into the same outlets that you're plugging into in New Orleans and Tampa, wherever. It's all cookie cutter, it's set. And I think that kind of uniformity, whether it's in medicine in this industry, which I way out of my lane to even talk about that, but facilities, we talk about it. Dennis Lausch is our team president, and he is so passionate about the sport. And we'll sit there and we'll talk, just as an aside, after we've come home from a Sunday game where we just got killed in Philadelphia, and we want to talk about horse racing, because horse racing is our outlet. And it's our happy place, it's our fun place, and we'll talk about, you know, how do we make this industry better? It's just two of us, you know, what kind of impact can we have? Well, we can have an impact if we band everybody together, you know, and, you know, one of the things we talked about was how many great, iconic racetracks are there in the country. You know, just like all the stadiums in the NFL have to report to a stadium guy at the NFL to make sure that they're providing the proper amount of things for fans and fan engagement and what have you. And so those are the kinds of things we talk about. And again, those are topics for other days, you know.
Well, I want to, at some point I want to get back to Facebook Live. Something you said made me think of it. But first I want to ask Michael from, you know, in his life, as one of his lives, as a political consultant, he has booted home some real long shots to win elections. And so, you know, racing a lot of times is going up against the odds, bucking the odds to try to, you know, get increased market share or hang on to what it has. What, you use both traditional and non-traditional medium, what are the takeaways you would tell horse racing from the political world or your other lives, your betting world too?
From to echo what Greg said, you know, we don't have the big TV weekly contracts. We're almost forced as, you know, horse players, people who love the game, trainers, breeders, owners. we're really forced to promote ourselves. And social media is a terrific opportunity to do that. And as a collective group, one person having a couple thousand followers, GMB does a great job with their Twitter account. They do show things that are interesting to people, the behind the scenes stuff, but everybody can do it. It's not necessarily free, because it does take a little bit of time, but as a collective group, you can reach hundreds of thousands of people. So we use, in my business, advertising, communication, we use our candidate or client channels, which is how we look at them, and we co-opt other people's channels. Like a Drew Brees channel has, I don't know how many followers he has, but it has more than I do. A Conor McGregor channel is 10 million people. So if there's any opportunity for when someone, that likes horse racing or comes to the track, or that you interact with, visits a farm, that you can use their channel to communicate your business or your promotion or your talent. I think that's one, free, easy way to reach more people that are outside of our normal, horse-loving fans. I'll say one other thing, and then we can move on. The number that was given was 68% of the people use some sort of social media. The number for people that are 18 to 35 is near 90%. That's the core of the people that we need to reach if we're going to try to grow this game, which is what we're really, here talking about, how we're promoting the game. We can promote it to ourselves, and it really doesn't make any difference. But the group we're trying to reach and the way that they get their news and get their information is on social media. They don't watch TV anymore. I mean, I know this from doing campaigns where we're trying to target these voters, and you cannot find them on television. They're watching Netflix, or they're watching Hulu, or you can't advertise on those channels. So, you have to find channels, not necessarily TV channels, but even people. People are, Drew Brees is a channel. He distributes information through his social media. The Saints are a channel. So as you find, people who have bigger channels than you do, it's an opportunity to use them, especially to the people that we're trying to grow this game and promote this game, which is the 18 plus, the younger people, the younger generation.
Well, I have a question. Maybe Doug Tatum, who's from Louisville, by the way, and a big horse racing fan, and used to work at the Courier-Journal with me. But how do we get that demographic? Is there certain things we should tag or what?
I don't know if there's a particular hashtag we use. I think the idea of influencer marketing is really, really smart. If I was a California racetrack owner, I would figure out a way to get one of the damn Kardashians there one day. They put Conor McGregor to shame in terms of the following numbers. But I think, if I was a trainer, if I ran a stable, it's your story, you should own it. You should be very cared deeply about how you're being perceived publicly. How many people were a trainer when they were upset about Jenny or Bob Fortis or Gary West running a story that they didn't like or didn't agree with? Well, now you can tell that story, and you should be telling that story yourself. That's what Greg and I do. The same in the Pelican industry. It's our story to tell. It's not some newspaper story to tell. It's ours. And the core principles, I think, are tell people what they don't know, take them where they can't go, and then if possible, move them emotionally. Make them laugh, make them cry, make them feel nostalgic. And if you do that, the quality of your content is just going to get things right. The most valuable thing is a share on Facebook or a retweet on Twitter. You want to expand your own personal reach by having other people do that.
No, this is an aside, but I saw that the Pelicans have a Pinterest account, which I have one, but I've never used because I heard it was just like recipes and stuff. But the Saints do not. So is that a demographic thing?
The Pelicans Pinterest account's never happened.
Oh, okay. Well, so what are the big channels you're talking about?
We have 5. So it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and then Weibo in China. So
Yeah.
we have combined 1.5 million followers in China, and that's small compared to like the big
Yeah.
Yeah.
warriors or cat warriors.
They love Anthony Davis in China.
Oh, yeah.
So we have 5.
Yeah, wow.
We pay attention to.
Well, Tom and I, both were, old school journalists, came up, Selectric typewriters was the big technology. And obviously a lot's changed. And, now that you're on, you're in the marketing side, in publicity side with both the Horsemen and also the Maryland Jockey Club on projects. How do you all integrate? You've got a new website that you're the managing editor of for the THA.
Yeah, let me start with the website, because one of the reasons that I was hired was the THA, which has 6 affiliates, 5 in the Mid-Atlantic and 1 in Illinois, had no website. So I got hired, that's a part of my job. I got hired to help find a couple of people that actually built the website, because I wouldn't know what to do. But my job was mainly to make sure that the proper content was up there. What the website really is, it's kind of a Horseman's news and resources website, but a big part of the reason for it is to get stuff out there that's no longer being covered by what's left of the racing press, basically. And, we're in a situation now in this industry, not right now, it's been going on for, for 12 or 15 years, because, I like writing about it, but a lot of people said that you've had the misfortune of writing about it because nobody else wants to touch it. And it's true, writing about medication is awful. It's awful. And that stuff's not a positive test, it's just all the stuff that goes into it and the fighting and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, the purpose of the website was to just get stuff out, to let people know that progress is being made. If people don't want to acknowledge it, that's fine, but the Horsemen need to have something out there that shows what's going on. That's really, really what the website came down to. Traffic's picked up a little bit, but again, a lot of it's dry content. I don't put any race results up there because there's plenty of other places for that. We do have a Twitter account, but it's mainly, we send out stuff that's of interest to Horsemen. If a threshold level changes on a drug where there's been 8 positives in one state, which is a sign that there's probably a problem, but that goes out so people understand what's going on. I freelance for Mid-Atlantic Thoroughbred. I help them cover West Virginia. That's where I cover racing, like the Charlestown Classic or the West Virginia Breeders' Classics. That's the extent of my racing coverage anymore. So I do kind of like nuts and bolts stuff. But in Merlin's a very interesting case because circumstances, some really, really bad circumstances, like there almost wasn't a winter meet at Laurel years ago because of infighting. They were forced into coming to a 10-year agreement, and the legislature and the governor pushed it, actually, that was tied into getting a percentage of revenue from video lottery terminals at the casinos that were starting to open. So, somehow they were able to put together. But one of the things that they realized is that, yeah, we're not going to agree on everything. And it's true. I mean, I see it every day. There's problems every day. It's not a panacea, but compared to other places, there's a lot of good stuff that gets done because people have committed to just saying, okay, if we do something, it's got to be the Horsemen, the racetracks, the breeders, and if necessary, the jockeys get involved. Like this new aftercare program that was started last year. Jessica Hammond is here. She is the administrator. She's going to talk on a panel tomorrow on one of the aftercare panels. But, I don't want to say that the aftercare program is marketing. Marketing's really not one of my favorite terms anyway. This is more about like outreach and advocacy for me, reaching out to people. So, if this program has admitted 50, I think up to 50 horses since last May, horses that have raced at Laurel or Pimlico or Timonium. You know, it's not necessarily, I mean, we kind of promote it to let people know that it's there, but what it does is it sends a positive message out to the public that people care about their horses. And, you know, that may not be marketing, but it's probably like one of the biggest forms of marketing that you can do. Because we had a booth when the program launched. It was at Pimlico Preakness Week. There's all these people, they come by on these sunrise tours, like hundreds of people. And they came up to the booth, and myself or whoever was there was talking about the program. And there were a bunch of people who had no idea. They thought that these horses just like died and went away, or they were sent to bad places and all this, which years ago might have been the case in some cases. I don't know. Well, I do know, but that's beside the point. Anyway, it's changing, and it was a good message to send. But I did want to mention one thing that we did last year, and again, this was a joint idea. I don't think any one person came up with it, you know, but the executive director of the MTHA. I have a tendency, I get agitated, I use my hands when I get pissed and stuff like that. You know, I'm like, well, what the hell's going on with this thing? And he said, Tom, you're going to learn. We're going to have to do it. And I've had this conversation with him 12 times since. He says, Tom, we're going to have to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to pay for the whole thing, but basically we need to make sure that it gets followed through on. Anyway, there was this idea to have a new owner's day. It was March 18th of last year. And there was an owner's seminar, and nobody knew about the surprise. Anyway, there were like 250 people upstairs in the clubhouse of this new owners program. And most of them were not licensed. I mean, there were some people who came who wanted to learn more about horse ownership and meet a couple of the trainers who actually ended up getting horses out of this deal from some people who actually went to a sale. They went to the Timonium sale and bought horses. But anyway, the surprise was there were 6 overnight races that day and 5 stakes. The overnight races, the fields were a little short. Let's say there were maybe 42 horses in the 6 races or whatever. And anyone who wasn't licensed who was there got to draw out a name. And they got the horse from March 18th to December 31st. Now, they didn't own the horse, but the way that this was set up was the 3 entities put up $50,000. And the horse that had the most earnings, the top 5 horses that had the most earnings through the end of the year, those people got the money. And it was paid like purse money, like first place was $30,000, 3 people split the $10,000, or 3 people split $30,000, et cetera, et cetera. But what was interesting about it is, you know, I told them, and we actually created a website that I had to populate with all the stories about when these horses were running and how they ran, so people could keep track of the standings, including the money standings. And, you know, I told them repeatedly, and it was on the website, sign up for Equibase Stable Mail. Put your horse's name in the field, and you can click if you want to see entries, results, when it worked out, and all this kind of stuff. So a couple weeks later, there was another event there, and I'm running into these people who were there for the owner seminar. How do I track my horse? And I'm like, well, are you using Stable? Yeah, but I can't get it to work. So anyway, what I started doing, because I thought, you know, we had like 120 people in this contest. It was a captive audience. So I started sending them individual emails every time their horse was in. Maybe 3-4 days before the horse was in. If I was busy, maybe the morning of if I forgot. And some of them started conversing with me through email. And there were some that actually were coming to the track when the horses ran, because they were invited to come into the winner's circle when the horses won. And they were also welcome to go visit the horses in the barn area. They just had to work through us so we could line up the trainer of the horse and say, hey, these people want to meet their horse and all this kind of stuff. And so it kind of turned into a very good way to connect with people. I still run into a lot of them. You know, most of them were from Maryland, but the rest of them were from, you know, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Virginia, and West Virginia, all within driving distance of Laurel and Pimlico. So they were coming to the racetrack. So the idea was to just keep them engaged, maybe to do some things for them. And, as it turned out, I think maybe 5 or 6 of the horses only ran a couple times because, as everybody knows in this room, there's no guarantee that your horse is going to run for those 8 months. But I kind of kept track of this, I guess. The horses combined won 45 races. And they earned over $1 million, and most of these horses were claimers. But people were just enthralled with following them. If they ran at Charlestown, they knew about it. If one of them ran at Parks, some people went up to Parks to watch, just in case the horse won and they could get their photo taken. But the thing is, though, like 6 to 8 people actually invested in racehorses in some form. And one woman, she got involved in a partnership that was actually at the seminar that has these like $1,000 share deals. And she ended up with 2 horses trained by Phil Schoenthal, who actually bought the horses. And one of them won a maiden special weight, and the other one won a maiden waiver claimer, which is, in Maryland, is now kind of a special weight because you can't claim a Maryland bred if the person puts it in without the claiming price. But it turned into a really, really good program. And we're not going to do the same thing again when we have another one. We're talking about doing something more where we just draw some names and work with some local partnership groups that are really interested, and just paying for shares of horses and giving them to people so they could have them, and then work with the trainers to kind of, bring the people to the racetrack and let them come to the track and watch the horses. So, that's the kind of thing that we're trying to focus on, the ownership thing. The betting end of it, fortunately, a lot of these people like to bet horses because, I know them now. They're at the track. When they're there, they're betting horses, which is a good thing. And they don't only go to Laurel. They'll go to Charlestown, they go to Penn, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the kind of stuff, but it was expensive. This is not something that everybody could do, okay? But the key part of it was having everybody involved in it, number one, and number two, following through with these people for about 8 months and making sure that you stayed engaged with them so they would come back. And it was I don't know if it was worth the money that they spent on it, but the overall impression was it was worth it because, people now think that we care, basically.
Yeah, and I think the other important point you made, Tom, was that if you're the horseman, don't wait for the racetrack to do something that, maybe just go on and do it.
Yeah.
And Buff Bradley's here. He's on the board of the Kentucky HBPA and gotten very active on Facebook. He and his handicapped horse, the player, but also using aftercare. And when you made the point, I think we'd all agree that you might not like to use the word marketing, but the fact is aftercare is really a very important aspect that the horse racing can market. And can you just sort of speak to your experience? Because you've done a lot with off-the-track thoroughbreds.
Yeah, and we have really started using that as marketing. So I was wondering what he was saying. I've used it showing that we've taken our retired racehorses, and I also do the 4-H horse program in our county. So we have a lot of kids that come and ride these horses, and we put them in the arena, and they're just different horses. So what we're doing is retraining them. We don't make money at it, but we are seeing that they're moving on to some different careers, their second careers. Another thing I want to say is that I agree with Greg. We really have to put out there the behind-the-scenes thing. I mean, as you were saying about the player, I have his whole page, and I try to post something different about him. He sits like a dog, and I do that. He eats peppermints from underneath the gate. I've got Calvin Burrell feeding him apples in the morning, and I try to do something different with him all the time and trying to get that out there, and I get more people hitting on liking his photos and just the behind the scenes and the different stories about the horse, so they kind of get to know the horse. And it's unbelievable the feedback I get from that.
Has it impacted your business that you can tell?
I don't know. It was probably retired section and the 4-H for the kids. So, you know, we are trying to market ourselves that way, but everything out there that we're doing. I think that, I think it's probably helped. Yeah, I'm sure it has. But I think, you know, the retweeting and the reposting, the sharing, I think all of that helps. And I think that is very important.
Peter, do you have any from this conversation, follow-up thoughts?
No, I think that what I'm hearing is exactly right. I know that one of the things I feel responsibility toward, and we usually have anywhere from 1 to 3 horses going, 1 or 2. I tend to get a group of people for each race our horse is in, and I take them to the track, and I take them to the backside, and it's kind of a thoroughbred 101. You take them, and most of these people, if they've ever been to the race, have never been on the backside of the track. They've never, you know, to all of us in this room, to meet a trainer or to shake hands with a jockey or to see what happens where the grooms eat on the backside, that's common daily things for us. But for them, it really hits upon the point that I think Greg made, and that is you take them somewhere they can't go. And so when they go and they get to see that process of the horse's legs being wrapped, and you have to be diligent so that they don't get too close to anything or go someplace they're not supposed to go. But typically, when I hire a trainer, that's one of the things I ask them. Are you willing to allow me to bring some of my family friends or clients or whomever it may be, because I think this ultimately may pay off for you, and it has paid off for them. These fellows have gotten a horse or two along the way, and it's gotten a lot more people really interested in racing. They go back and they feel like they have a better understanding of it. They've got a little bit of skin in the game because they've seen that horse on the backside, and they become more engaged. And I think that all of us here have an obligation to lead by example. I had a horse that I bred at our farm. I thought it was going to be the next Indiana Derby winner, and like many things, I thought it didn't pan out. But the horse had gone through. We did a lot of training on the horse. The horse got gate carted one start, and it was just not doing very well. And so that horse ended up the title of this example should be, "There is no end to the way you can lose money on a horse." That's what it should be titled. So anyhow, after all of that, my daughter got the horse, and she took the horse to Purdue University, and it was the only horse on the Purdue. It's not a team, but it's a club sport in the Big Ten, women's English riding. And she took that horse and converted it to a sport horse, and rode for Purdue University in Big Ten club competition for the women's team. So I think those are examples of repurposing and getting more people involved, and I think that's exactly what we all need to be doing.
Greg?
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking, just listening to everybody, but specifically, you had jogged something, was these Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, so I really don't get it, but I do sit in meetings at the Saints and the Pelicans, and one thing we have done in the last couple of years, we've really embraced analytics and metrics, right, Doug? And so what we do is, if there's someone coming to your barn or coming to your Facebook site or coming to your Twitter, coming to your racetrack or or as an owner of one of your syndicates, you really want to start to capture that database and build that database. You want to find out what they like, what they want to see, and who they are, and kind of understand who your fan is or who your client is, and engage them. How do you might engage me differently than you might engage someone else in this audience, and that's really more probably industry-wide than it is owners or trainers, but even it can go down to that parochial level. And I think one of the things we've learned, and I'm telling you, we have been able to seriously monetize Facebook and Twitter to a certain degree, but really our complete business model with analytics and metrics, and that's basically there's a cost involved with that, but understanding who follows you and who likes you, And whoever likes you and follows you are the people you want with you. And they may have a friend who will eventually like you. And so that tentacle, that will grow. And we see that in our business. We don't necessarily have to do it on the Saints side, but we have to sell basketball in New Orleans. We have to sell the Pelicans. They come to us in droves at the Saints. Pelicans, we have to kind of, hey, we have a game tomorrow night, can you come? And so then we'll go to our analytics and our metrics, and we'll see who came to a Thursday night game. Did they bring their 3-year-old son? So we have all that information. And I think if horse racing can get to that point, by using social and digital platforms, by a collection, it's something to think about, and it's something to work towards. It's just an idea.
Michael, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, that's the next, a next level, but he's absolutely right. Something we do in politics, and you would be scared to death if you knew how much information we knew about each one of you.
Right.
It scares me to even have that information. But we have captive audiences in horse racing. They're at tracks, and on big days, if let's say you're a breeder and you have a horse, you're trying to sell some, a season or two. I mean, for little money, you can run a little Facebook ad or a digital ad that just serves the ad to the people that are at the track for very little money. I mean, that is an extremely captive audience. If I was a breeder, I'd be looking at trying to do some of that. If I was a trainer, I would also be looking to do some of that because that's where the owners are. And when they go to check their Facebook page at the track, when they go to check their scores for, a basketball team they're following, your ad pops up.
Yeah.
I mean, those are relatively inexpensive.
You can capture those on your website.
Yeah.
Like I went on the Darley site and put in my information. And without fail, I get emails from them. And they're personalized emails.
Right.
At least they feel personalized. And I'm buying what they're selling, And I may not literally buy, but I'm buying what they're selling, and I'm interested, and I read it.
But that does take a little bit.
They've captured me.
And it takes a little bit of an investment. But, it's
But that's
certainly
definitely a
worth it.
byproduct of what we're talking about here
Yes.
today.
Well, but I want to touch on the idea, though, again, of getting involved in marketing and everybody in the industry doing their part to promote the sport. And I think horse racing is uniquely set up for that because of the access that, some of these gentlemen have talked about that you just don't see in the other, professional sports, that you can just go and, get jockey autographs or go up to trainers when they're by the paddock or whatever. Tom, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, when you just mentioned about the whole marketing thing, how many people, and I'm not picking on Pennsylvania here, okay, but I'm going to use it as an example. How many people in here constantly read bad news about Pennsylvania racing? Okay, all right. Now, I'm not, it should, when something happens, it should be covered. I'm not saying that stuff shouldn't be covered, okay? But I always was like, well, yeah, I'm going to cover it, but I'm going to make sure that I cover everything else too, because there's other stuff that goes on in Pennsylvania, okay? Is anybody aware that the Horsemen's groups are now largely responsible for about a $2 million a year marketing budget for racing? Is anybody aware of that? Hello? Why not? See? Like I've been told many times, Tom, we have to do it. Okay, now, Parks is a THA member. Okay, I can't speak for Penn National. I do know this, that the Penn National HBPA wanted to be a part of the match series, which we're bringing back this year. And, and because of that, we have 2 more racetracks in the match series. So now we have 25 races at 25 races in 5 divisions at 7 tracks. And it was largely, having Penn National and Presque Isle in there made a big difference because they were willing to step up, even though they're not THA tracks. But but my point is, there's stuff going on that you're not going to read about, They gave up $2 million in purse money a year to try to get a bill passed last year or 2 years ago. And now, as it turns out, they're going to end up using a lot of the money to do their own kind of promotions to either introduce people to racing or get people back to the racetrack because the tracks aren't doing it. So I'm just going to point that out, that things are going on, and, you may not know about it or you may not read about it. So that's kind of our responsibility to get the word out that this kind of stuff's going on.
I'll just tell you a couple of initiatives that we're working on with the Kentucky HBPA. I've got a pal that's a 23-year-old UK grad, loves horse racing. His mom and I are really good friends, and we are going to start something trying to attract 20-somethings into horse racing. And he's a member of a group called YPAL, which is Young Professionals Association of Louisville. It has over 1,000 members. It's like 40 and under, young, like I said, young professionals. And we talked to Churchill Downs, Gary Palmisano, about doing an event like at the races there. And RJ went and talked to the executive director. She's here like, yeah, we did that years ago. And Churchill's going to make, we're going to go like a Thursday happy hour, bring them out. And then he asked about, doing a barn tour. Would they be interested in that? And she said, we did one years ago and it was so popular we had to limit how many people could go. So I think there is a market, but just things like that, certainly like Churchill Downs does a lot with marketing, but there's also some things their hands are kind of tied. They wanted to do something with the University of Louisville, they were telling me, but the University of Louisville to do this wanted them to pay them $100,000. Well, that was, the end of that. So, but we've got some ability, this is what Gary was saying, that you all might be able to, that we mean at Kentucky HBPA might be able to get some inroads with doing some things with U of L. And so just different things like that. Again, like what you're saying, I just thought what Greg did. And did it rain? I'm sorry, I read about in the press notes that you were bringing all these people out, and then I saw the forecast. But
It rained right before, but it ended up being a beautiful night.
yeah. But just things like that. And like Wayne Lucas, he always invites when he wins a race. He looks around to see whatever kids are around and invites them into the winner's circle. And now that one of my bosses, Corey Johnson's coming back, I could tell you about, I just had this idea, and he likes the idea, and Ted, the general manager, likes the idea, so I think we're going to do it. It's to have people on Twitter, a contest to like why you love Kentucky Downs, or why you love going there, or why it's on your bucket list to go.
Big purses.
And have there's a T-shirt that says that, in fact. But then have it, the prize being a trip for two to come to Kentucky Downs on the day of the tourist stakes, and. But that keeps Kentucky Downs in social media, and all these different people, and you don't know who all's following them and stuff. But I think the other takeaway is we need the Bensons having a horse in the Derby every year. That definitely helps horse racing. So, but
We're for it.
any thoughts in the audience about? Now, I want to ask the Indiana HBPA, because was it last year you all? I think I talked about social media, and then I think you've started doing some social media, right? And how's that gone?
It hasn't expanded geometrically, it's expanded mathematically. We're operating at a small enough scale that
Who did you end up getting to do that for you?
hired a person that actually is behind it.
Krista Conway, she has a magazine called Horse Race.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Because like we said, you don't have to be the one doing it. Dale Roman says he doesn't understand it, but he knows enough about it. Oh, so I was going to tell you my Facebook Live. So that's like, Dale said one day, we were doing with the Kentucky HBPA, like following the Kentucky guys with Derby horses and stuff. So we were at the Bluegrass, and Dale had a lot of success, I think the year before, at the Travers, doing, it might have been, what's that other thing that, not Facebook Live, but Periscope, yeah. But anyways, he says to me, you can do Facebook Live, right? Well, let's do Facebook Live there. I'm like, well, no, but I got 24 hours to learn it. So luckily there was somebody in publicity at Keeneland, a young gal, taught me how to do Facebook Live. So that's pretty cool, except that you have to have good internet or you can't. And that was tough Bluegrass day. But I thought I had this fun tool. So then I'm at Oaklawn and I'm doing it. Then I learned, it's a really good idea to make sure that A, the person you're going to be doing it with is good with that, and B, also just to have an idea of the people around you, because there's people, just trainers watching their horses on the rail and, trainer talk. Here I am shooting, and it was Classic Empire was on the track, blah, blah. And then the guy next to me, they're oblivious to what I'm doing, dropping F-bombs and stuff. And it's like, and it's live. There's nothing you can do about that. So that was a hard lesson learned for me, that there's sometimes the old where you actually edit it. So do y'all do much Facebook Live, Greg? Doug?
So, basketball side, Coach Gentry speaks before every game. It's on the website, Facebook, app, live, post game. That's 164 events in the NBA season, plus practice access. There's probably about 200 a season. And on the same side, every day of training camp, post game show, Friday, coaches, press conference. Probably about 50 to 60 times.
I think it's something that tracks could really, use. I know in, like, working at Kentucky Downs in Ellis Park, though, you run into a choice. Do you do Facebook Live, or do I do Facebook non-live, or, just iPhone video that can be sent out to TV stations? Because you can't do that with Facebook Live, really. And it's so usually I err on the side of getting it to the TV station. And here's something to remember: these iPhones, or the equivalent, that quality is good enough for TV stations. And I found that there's the CBS affiliate in Louisville. The sports director loves horse racing, but the people that run the station have, they don't care if he does racing, but they're not going to put any resources into it. No, so there's no manpower, there's no money. But if I can send him, I was sending him gun runner videos working down here leading into the Pegasus that they were using in Louisville. And I know from Kentucky, same thing with Kentucky Downs and like the Groupie Doll Stakes at Ellis and stuff. So that's something, again, that you might think the HBPA, don't wait for the racetrack. Some of you your tracks don't even have publicity people anymore. Sir?
Yes. I think it's great. We're being citizens marketers. We're all telling positive stories about the industry. But I think we may not be reaching at a more broader audience. That there's people that we're kind of in our own echo chamber, and it's good. We need to continue to tell those positive stories to rebut the PETA and the bad apples out there. But I guess I have a question for the panel is, partnerships are great, getting new people involved, but is there anything that you see at a national level, national stakeholders, perhaps collaborating with our racetrack partners to rebrand the industry, to rebut the narratives out there that it's a bunch of cheaters, or dealing with stuff at the federal level, or it's a dying industry? Do you see anything? I know that the analogy has been made before, talking about a league with the commissioner, and that's a little bit far-fetched, but do you see anything that should be discussed at events like these, and to spur a really rebranding and revitalization of the industry at sort of a top level rather than organically from each affiliate, kind of doing their thing?
No, I don't. And that's an honest answer. Really, I remember covering the NTRA when it was formed in 1998 or whenever it was, and there was a lot of good stuff that came out. Whether you like the initial ads or not, I personally did, but whether you like the initial ads or not, there's always that kind of conflict between this is too cutting edge or this is too industry, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? It went in another direction. Maybe because the industry just wasn't ready to all get on the same page about things. Now, the NTRA, is Alex still, he's probably not here anymore, but, now the NTRA does a lot of really good advocacy stuff, like legislative working in D.C., the National Handicapping Contest and all that kind of stuff. But, I just don't see what you're asking. I don't see what you're asking happening anytime soon. And I think a part of the problem is the split over the medication stuff. Whether or not what we're doing now is sufficient versus those who think that the only way to fix it is to have a federal bill and to put an independent agency in charge of it. I know, but I think that that's a reason for
I
it.
think putting that aside, assuming we get some consensus there, which is a big assumption, but putting that aside, I'm talking about, you're dealing with it at the Mid-Atlantic, about collaborating on race days. Our full crop went down to 36 to 22,000. We don't have the polls to run the days we used to, before the recession. And you're seeing a consolidation now, but it seems to be much more reactionary than a proactive measure of, and I know it's hard to dictate each state, in our federal system, but, I guess I was, just wanted your thoughts on, is that something that's worth discussing, or it's just?
I think, well, I think it is under discussion. Like, I know that the THA is having discussions about working together on new owner initiatives. I'm sure that the HBPAs do. I have no doubt about that. I'm sure that TOBA does. But is there anything cohesive? I think it's just each group working on its own from what I've seen so far.
But, I mean,
If I'm wrong, please let me know, but I think that that's where it stands.
if you're looking at a national initiative, you've got the Jockey Club spending a lot of money on America's Best Racing. What impact is that having? They show up at the big race days, but you look at the big race days and they don't seem like they need a lot of help. It's the Thursdays. And I don't know, it seems like the trend is, and you all correct me, but that is going micro and worrying about the local tracks. I had this conversation with maybe you, Tom, doing what you can do, and what you can do is work with your local market.
I'm sorry that I did not
Your
answer your
thoughts,
question,
Eric, on it?
Joe, but I'm
Before
sorry.
you cut us off, you got thoughts?
Before I cut everybody off. This is a conversation that was very early on, and I'll ask Leroy's forgiveness while I say it, but this was a topic of discussion very early on when I started. I presented this to the executive board, and I won't recall which meeting it was, but I did a lot of reading on marketing ourselves, and it stemmed a lot of conversations with Jenny and I. If you look at the PGA, before there was a Tiger Woods, it was a dying market. What happened to the PGA in a perfect storm with Tiger Woods, the Players Association got together. And it's well documented, and I've done a lot of research on it. The Players Association got together and said, okay, from every piece of purse that every player has, and they collect, we're going to develop an advertising campaign. And I talked about this. It's been 2 years ago. There was no interest in our group at the time for me to solicit affiliates and other owners about giving a piece of the pie from the purses to develop a marketing campaign. I'm done with the racetracks trying to market anything but themselves, and that's fine. We live in a capitalistic society. That's great. But nobody's going to market you people and myself except us at this point. So if you want to step up, I can bring out all my old notes and we can go through that. But if you give us a percentage, 0.25%, I think is what I threw out, and it's just an arbitrary number. If you start giving a collection, let the National HBPA take a hold of it, because the other two Horsemen's organizations will be very supportive. We can market this, but it takes funding. All of what we're talking about here is very simple from the standpoint of social media. It's not free because it's time consuming, but ultimately if we want to get some videos out there, if we want to have somebody putting YouTube, managing websites by the hour is necessary. Dennis does way more than I would assume most people do, but he can't do it with one person. I am the National HBPA Twitter feed when it comes to the live stuff. Dennis helps put on all of the information that's newsworthy, and I'm the only one out there putting it on live. But if you want to get down to the brass tacks, come back to what I said 2 years ago, and you take it on. So that, I'm not trying to trump this panel in any way, shape, or form, but ultimately, citizens marketers comes back to you as the citizens. So, damn, I'm going to close that panel right there. I can't thank this group enough. It was an amazing panel for Jenny to put together. We thank every one of you guys for being here. Most importantly, the passion. I had text from the audience that this was the best panel so far because of the passion. I'm sure Stacy's going to top it tomorrow, but this group here was very important for us, and to follow behind such a great owner with Mr. Witham here, I think it's been a great day. So I do want to remind everybody one more time about the change in time for the cocktail reception at Antoine's, moving back to 7 o'clock. It'll be a lot of fun. I also want to make sure everybody understands the agenda for tomorrow, because it is a bit different than previous conventions. This room will be cut in half in the morning when you come down for breakfast. The executive board will meet at 8:30. From 8:30 to hopefully no more than 11:30, we'll be on this side, but breakfast will still open up at 7:30. Feel free to come down, all of you. We'll have an open board meeting. There are some topics that, if you aren't on the executive board, we'll ask you to let us discuss in private. But that'll be on this half. And then we'll move right into the awards luncheon, which I'm extremely proud of, to have the presentations that we are going to have tomorrow for lunch. Obviously, tonight is a reception to celebrate the life of Kent Sterling, who was an amazing man in a lot of different ways, a good mentor to me, and certainly one of the strongest advocates for Horsemen that we'll ever see. We're also very honored to award the National HBPA Claiming Horse of the Year, which goes to Mr. and Mrs. Troy Honorado with Mended, who also won a Claiming Crown race this year. They've made the trip here, very happy to be here. We'll give them a presentation. In addition to that, we'll also give a formal resolution to Sherry Holmes Sterling, who will be with us tomorrow and tonight, the wife of Kent. And then we'll also give a formal resolution to Bob Lee, who is a longtime Nebraska HBPA and National HBPA supporter. And then we'll wrap it up with a video and a brief talk, which Reed doesn't know it yet, but Reed's going to give us a little spiel on the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards, and once again a solicitation for everybody out there to make a nomination. Our goal is to have 200 nominations this year. We got 144 this year, from Washington to New York, and hopefully we'll get Louisiana and every other jurisdiction. And I'm going to solicit all of the executive directors to help me get information to your racing secretaries so we can get this out in every trainer's hands and every owner's hands, that they can nominate one of their employees. Because if you haven't been to this event yet, I encourage you to come. It's a very special event. This year it's going to be tied in along with the Breeders' Cup, EquestriCon, and the Owner View. It's going to be the week of Breeders' Cup. So it'll be an amazing event. It's very touching, and Reed is a very integral part in that, along with Todd Mostaller, who I saw left a bit ago. So thank you for a wonderful day. Thank you for everybody who came. Thank you to all our panelists. A special thank you to Clay for being here with his wife. And once again, I really appreciate it. So see you guys tomorrow.